Perhaps one of the unintended consequences of the COVID lockdowns and mandates has been Alberta parents seeking to take a more active role in the education of their children. Wednesday evening, in the riding of West Lethbridge, the organization Parents for Choice in Education is hosting an event to hear concerns from parents and advocate for more parental involvement in education. So to talk more about the desires that parents have for their child's education, we welcome John Hilton-O'Brien, the Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education. John, good to have you on today.
Thank you, Jeanette. It's nice to be here.
Oh, thank you. You too. Okay, so John, maybe give us a brief overview of Parents for Choice in Education. What is it exactly?
So, Parents for Choice in Education is an Alberta based nonprofit organization advocating for an excellent, quality oriented, choice driven education system that recognizes parental authority. We figure that children don't come one size fits all, and education shouldn't either. We've been around for about 10 years now.
10 years. Okay, that's a while. That's long before the pandemic. Absolutely. So, why did you join Parents for Choice in Education? What was in it for you? You're the executive director. You're not the founder of it though, right?
I am one of the founders of it as well. And we saw a number of the issues that we're seeing these days come up. There were some significant challenges both to parental authority and to the idea of choice in education coming up in Alberta at the time. And we thought we should probably mobilize to do something about it.
Okay, so enter the organization.
Precisely.
Okay, so why do you feel that choice in education will create a better education environment or a better education experience for Alberta
Well,
students?
if you go to our website at parentchoice.ca, you'll find a number of research documents because research is one of the things we do. And so, over the course of 8 years, choice in education, especially the private schools and homeschooling, saved the province about $1.9 billion. That's with a B. So, we've saved a lot of money on it. But also, it's allowed us to customize the experience of education for children. Now, I myself grew up going to school in a special program. I was part of the first cohort that went through the International Baccalaureate program in Calgary back in the
Oh,
80s.
wow.
And in fact, given that I've been watching my grades decline through junior high school through 10th grade, I would have to say that the International Baccalaureate program, which let me change schools, get into an environment that suited me much better, saved my educational career.
Wow. That's amazing. How did it save your educational career and what did it do
Well,
exactly?
options were very narrow in the program that I was going to. I experienced bullying personally. It was a very difficult thing to go through. And the IB program allowed them to offer programs that matched my interests and also students with similar interests. So, both socially and educationally specific, it was a much better choice for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Absolutely. And of course, we've seen statistics that show that when kids move to, alternative models of education that they excel and do better as learning, just better at learning, just as you were sort of, mentioning there. So in your mind, John, what is the payoff for parents in Lethbridge and beyond when they have a choice in education?
Well, the first payoff is simply better results for children. You get a better education that's tailored to the way that a child learns. And you get a certain amount of power as a parent to be able to make sure that the child is learning what's best for him or her, and that you have some connection to what's going on in your child's education.
Okay, so John, are we talking then? So this alternative schooling, would it be these micro schools? Would it be homeschooling? What does this look
There's
like
a
exactly?
there's a whole range of educational options in Alberta. We have our public schools. We have the separate school system, usually Catholic schools. We also have charter schools. Now, a charter school is run by a not for profit society of some sort. It doesn't charge tuition. and it takes anyone who comes. And a charter school focuses on a particular idea. So, for instance, in Calgary, we have Calgary STEM Academy that just started and Calgary Classical Academy. So, those are two sorts of charter schools, and they are fully funded. We also have three grades of private schools, from completely unfunded to the much more common fully accredited private school, which gets about 70% of funding, but no capital funding. And we have home education, which is divided into a couple of types. There's homeschooling that's done by notification only of the parents. So the parents are completely doing everything, to working through an educational authority, which helps to supervise that and make sure they're on the right track. And there's even such a thing as shared responsibility. So home educating parents can arrange to have one or two courses done by a local school, partly because we can't all afford to buy chemistry labs in our basement.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned sort of dollars there. So maybe can you talk about the financial case for dollars being able to follow a student to a school of the parent's choice?
Well, a few years ago, we commissioned a report that was done by Mark Milkey primarily, and another author, Paige McPherson. And what they showed was that Alberta had saved about 1 point, close to $1.9 billion on doing home education in private schools over an 8-year period in Alberta. It's a considerable savings. But one of the things that sometimes gets touted around as a bit of a canard by people who fancy themselves advocates for public education is the idea that private schools are for rich people only. They're not actually. Most people sending their kids to private schools are tradespeople. They're middle class people who simply want to have more involvement in their children's education and want to make sure it's done well. Yes, so there's a financial commitment, but it's not restricted to the wealthy.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's good to hear. One request that we've heard from public school teachers is that they request smaller class sizes. So can you maybe talk about how choice and school funding vouchers benefit parents, teachers, and students?
Well, one of the key problems in education is, of course, funding. And the funding model we have right now is called the weighted moving average. Before the weighted moving average, we funded schools based on butts and seats in September. Nowadays, however, it's only half the butts and seats this September, 30% from last year, 20% from the year before. And that means that growing schools are penalized under the current formula. And that's why it often seems that growing schools, particularly in places like Lethbridge and Calgary, are having too large of classroom sizes. The funding model does make it so that schools that are shrinking, such as some rural areas, don't have to suddenly fire teachers on October 1st or anything. But it provides a significant challenge. So this past year, I was successful in advocating to the minister, and they came up with a supplementary grant to help support growing schools. But the amounts that they chose to put in were not sufficient, really, to mitigate some of the class size problems we're having. So we're hoping to see more results from the ministry in that direction over the coming year or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. Can this maybe help students who might maybe fall through the cracks in a public school system? How that, maybe talk about how that choice in education could help a student like that.
Well, that is the very best people that it's for. So every public school system and Catholic school system also tries to have their own special programs within the schools. So in Strathmore, for instance, and I think in Lethbridge, there is an organization called Storefront School. So you may get some kids who are falling through the cracks go to that system, but it's still not appropriate for everyone. So you'll find parents who have a strong religious interest in the family. And so they'll send their children to a private school that's religiously based. So, for instance, you will find a variety of Christian schools across Alberta, and occasionally you'll find something like a Sikh school, as exists in Edmonton, done as a private school, which actually convinced the public system there to imitate it, I'm told. So you'll get specialty education like that. So it really helps with the children of immigrants in particular, letting them keep contact with their family's traditions. And it also speaks to the particular interest of a child. When you have a child who's really interested in maths and sciences, there's not a lot of outlet for that in the regular school system. But a STEM academy makes an enormous difference in their lives.
Yeah, 100%. John, how do you think your organization can create change in school choice?
Well, there's four things that we actually do. One of them is consciousness raising, such as my visit to Lethbridge tomorrow. We also do some exploration of issues through research. If you go through our site, you'll find columns that we've published as well that bring some of that research to the fore in a more digestible format. We do training, so we'll equip parents to advocate for themselves because you often need to advocate for your child. And we'll even train people to run for school board trustee, as we did in the last election. And we do a significant amount of advocacy to the government, as on the funding issue. So that's four ways that Parents for Choice in Education helps to make a difference there.
Okay, no, excellent. So is this desire for choice based on religious beliefs, or have you found that parents in general are looking for these better options when it comes to quality of education?
Lots of parents are looking for some sort of choice, and for a few of them, it's due to some sort of religious commitment. Usually, though, it doesn't cash out to a religious commitment that says we must home educate. It's simply a commitment to doing better for your children that is embedded in your religion. And over COVID, we did a lot of education from the home, even in the public schools. And many parents became aware of the quality of their children's education for the first time, and lots were dissatisfied. Many of us had an image of education in our minds that was much grander than we were seeing our children get. And so lots and lots of parents have set out to improve the lot of their children's education. And choice is the thing that allows you to do it. It forms the only basis for getting involved in your children's education. Because if you can't choose to go to a different school, there's no negotiation available, right? It is the school's way or the highway. And so choice is what allows parents to be involved in education. Without it, there's nothing.
Now, John, you're having an event in Lethbridge this week. What will you be discussing at the event? What's going to be going on there?
I'll probably be discussing basically the pillars of education reform mostly. I'll be talking about funding, curriculum reform, educational choice, and challenges to parental authority, such as the secrecy policies that many schools, including those in Lethbridge, have to do with children.
Okay, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Oh, very well. For historical reasons, many of our school boards in Alberta have a policy that says if your child is involved in a religious organization or if they're involved in a club that discusses sexual or gender issues, they're not allowed to tell the parents under any circumstances, even if the child's involvement touches on mental health issues that can be quite dangerous, which means that we're not seeing necessarily referrals for appropriate medical services. At the same time, we've discovered that Alberta has a pediatric gender identity clinic, which offers services up to and including, apparently, surgery. And they were
I've done a little research on that too, John, and I don't think that there's any doctor that would perform surgery on a child without parental consent.
absolutely. However, some documents came to light recently with the center explaining that folks, we will take initial referrals for children from your school. And that can be done without parental consent, at least in the early stage.
Right.
And so those documents are concerning, and we hope that that situation will be rectified very rapidly.
Yeah. I think,
So parents need to be very concerned about that
yeah.
and to speak up to make sure the situation is addressed properly. So this sort of thing creeps in on us, and we have to take prompt action to make sure that the right thing is done.
Well, it looks like that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much, John, for speaking to us today about choice in education. And by the way, you are speaking Wednesday evening at CASA between 6:30 and 8:30 p.m.
That's right.
Okay. Thanks for coming on today, John.
Thank you. Bye bye.
I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.